guys, welcome back to the channel. So you are not going to believe what I have found out, what I have figured out, what I should have looked at probably from the beginning, but just didn't think that this problem could be there. I've never had this problem before, never even dreamed of looking at this problem before, but now apparently it's been a problem. So you guys think back, and this video is going to have some talking in it, so bear with me, but stick around because you're going to want to see all this, I think, if you've been following along. So last video, the ribbon cable was definitely, beyond the shadow of a doubt, was a problem. Was it the problem? Probably not, unfortunately. Was it a big problem? Absolutely. So in regards to the ribbon cable, what I did was I got the ignition circuit and the boost control circuit, and we took it off of the switch panel. So the switches above and the relay panel below and the ribbon cable are completely out of the equation now. And we put toggle switches in it, and I'll show you that here in a minute. We put the toggle switches in and completely just bypassed all that altogether. So we go to the track like that, and the first pass, the car goes half track or so, and it popped one time. Bang. Whatever, you know, I'm over it at this point, whatever. But before that pass, I had turned on sync loss and sync loss reason in the data log. And if you don't have the laptop in the car data logging, there's a lot of things that you can't get into the onboard flash drive data log. So normally I don't need that stuff, so I have never had it turned on. So fast forward to the next pass, and it goes down through there, and it's banging and popping and carrying on, and I haven't changed anything. Beep. So what changed? What did I see? What did I find in that sync loss? So going down the track in the second pass, it popped several times, you know, and the sync loss counter said 8. So it lost sync 8 times in, you know, 5.5 seconds. So the sync loss reason showed to be number 2. And when you look that up, number 2 means that it's, all it says is it lost sync, missing tooth, didn't come at expected time or something like that. So when I start looking for reasons why that reason happens, it comes back to noise in the ignition circuit, or a bad crank sensor, or, you know, something along those lines. So it's kind of hard for me to explain, and I like to draw stuff on the chalkboard. So I'm going to flip the camera around and show you on my board what the reason is and what happened and how I fixed it. So let's check that out. Okay, so what you're looking at here is my terrible drawing of what is happening to the ignition circuit. So when the car is running fine, it sees the rising edge signal here, 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 like it should, and the teeth are spaced equally, like it should be. When the car pops and bangs, it's getting noise in the system, or noise in the ignition circuit, that looks like this. Here's a good rising edge, here is a bad one, here's a bad one, and so on. So every time the car backfires, it's because of this guy right here and this guy right here, and so on and so forth. And the reason why it causes sync loss is because it throws off when the computer expects to see the next tooth, and it doesn't regain synchronization until it comes all the way back around on the trigger wheel to this position right here. This is the big gap that it's looking for at a certain time, and it's not happening when it expects it. So by turning on the noise filtering in the software, which is a last resort to me, when you turn on the noise filtering, it more or less says that I'm expecting to see the teeth this often, and if I see them any more often than that, and I see these guys, that I am going to ignore them. Completely just ignore it. Now, it's possible that you can turn on the noise filtering so much that you're going to ignore good signals. At this point, I don't think I've done that, and it made 5 passes in a row that were good. So, game on. All right, so a quick glimpse of what I did as far as the wiring is concerned is we took this, I think you can see that in the camera there. Yeah, you can see it down there. So we took the wiring that went to the computer and off of this relay board that turned on the computer and the relays that control the ignition coils and the fuel circuit and all that stuff. And we took that, just put it on a toggle switch, ran a power wire to it, and we called it good. I actually did the same thing for the boost control as well, because I thought the boost control might be faltering because of that panel resetting. And neither one of those things were affected by the panel resetting, apparently. As strange as it is, and I just cannot believe it. It could have been a problem at some point down the road, but on this day, it wasn't the problem. So like I said earlier, I turned on the noise filtering, and the car goes down the track 5 times in a row, sets a new best, runs better than I expected it to. So we're going to call the noise filtering a fix. And maybe someday we'll look into why that noise is in the ignition circuit in the first place. It may just be there, and it's there because it's going to be there, and that's all it's going to be. So enough of that talking. Let's look at the passes. Okay, so you got to see 5 successful passes in a row. History being made, if you will. So one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier in the video is we rerouted some wires in hopes of trying to do away with some of the EMI that could potentially be coming from the coils. And so all that involved was this particular harness right here was all zip tied together, all nice and neat. And I just cut the zip ties and ran the crank trigger pickup wire around this way. And it was, I don't know, 4 inches away from the coils. I don't think that part actually did anything, and my OCD is driving me crazy and I want to put it back. But since we're making successful passes, I don't want to put it back. So I think I'm going to leave it like that for the interim until I relocate the coils, because I think I mentioned it in another video, but I'm going to put different valve covers on it and put the coils up underneath the headers and get a better PCV system, if you will, or crankcase ventilation, if you will. So that part will get loomed back up or zip tied back up a little neater here before too long. I'm not too concerned about it right now. And I don't think you can see it in the shot right now, but I actually have the driver's side header off, and I'll explain why I have that off right now. If you listen in those 5 passes, the engine still lays down a little bit on the top end, and what you're hearing is actually the boost falling off. So the car leaves the line at 4,200 RPMs and around 14 pounds of boost. And when I let go of the button, the RPMs fly up to about 7,200. So the converter flashes a little bit too much. We'll address that later. For now, it's okay. But the problem is when the converter starts to couple and it pulls the engine down a little bit, and then it tries to accelerate through low gear, the boost starts to fall off to around 15 pounds, and it climbs a little bit, 16 or 17. I shift gears, it drops again to about 15. So it's definitely losing boost. And I think that there's probably a twofold problem happening. Maybe just the one. I don't know for sure yet, but the header on the driver's side, and you've probably heard it in all the videos, has a pretty healthy exhaust leak due to the flange warping when I cut it apart and shortened it for this particular turbo build. Some of you may remember that. Anyways, exhaust leaks on a turbo car are bad. Big exhaust leaks on a turbo car are big bad. So it's probably losing exhaust energy as the car goes down the track, and it can't keep the turbine up to speed that it needs to generate that kind of boost. So I'm going to do some welding on the header flange and try to get it flat enough where it'll seal better than it has been, and go from there. The other part of that is I'm going to put the car up in the air and get under there and check the wastegates, pressure check them, and make sure they're not leaking air, because it is actually losing a little bit of gate pressure or dome pressure as the car goes down the track too. So it might be a combination of things, but we're going to check that out and get it ironed out, and hopefully next week we will go faster. Okay, so there's the header, guys, and what I was going to show you is how bad this thing is leaking exhaust. So this is number one, and I'm sorry, I said it backwards. This is number one, and that piece of silicone right there illustrates really good what's going on here. So these heads have a dual bolt pattern, and that little guy right there doesn't have much of a land to keep the exhaust from it. It comes out of the port, it goes down through that bolt hole, and it starts to blow the silicone out right around there, and then it just travels all the way around to here, and there's nothing to stop it. And you can see this one works like it's supposed to. These two work pretty good, and these two work pretty good. They're not blown out, and this one may be suspect. But the other part of that is every one of them is leaking on the top. And how that becomes a problem is, well, we know why it becomes a problem. It's the exhaust leak, and it's losing exhaust energy, and it's not spinning the turbine and all that stuff. But how I know that it's severe and it's not a little exhaust leak is the valve cover gasket right above that thing is actually kind of crunchy and cooked. So it's leaking a fair amount right there. So we're going to dress that thing up on the belt sander and see if there's anything we can do about it. Okay guys, thanks everybody for stopping by. I think we're going to call that quits for this video. I'll do the header repair and the wastegate testing and stuff in the next video. But right now, for the interim, I am ecstatic. I am happy. I am excited that this thing is actually turning around for me, and we're through the problems. It appears to be. I'm sure it's going to come back. I'm sure it is going to come back and haunt me at some point in the future. But until then, we will continue plugging on and see if we can get this power problem ironed out now, and hopefully go a little faster. And just for the record, the fastest pass was the next to the last one, and it was a little over a tenth faster than the previous passes I mentioned in the earlier videos. The 60-foot new best, 115 with an 8. So definitely big steps in the right direction. And all this is done with 20 pounds of boost, or 20.5 or something like that. The last pass, I did try to turn it up a little bit, but the exhaust back pressure, or the exhaust leaks, I'm sorry, and the wastegate leaks were not having it. So anyways, thanks everybody for stopping by. Appreciate it. Please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you in the next video.